The moment those new reports started circulating, fans were shocked, and the timelines lit up like somebody hit a match in a room full of gasoline. Because this time, it wasn't another harmless sisters shading each other headline. It was a story that sounded so wild, so specific, and so personal that people couldn't stop replaying it in their heads. The claims? That Kim Kardashian allegedly snapped so hard behind closed doors that she physically lashed out at Kourtney after Kourtney supposedly exposed what she called North's adult lifestyle. And before we go any further, let's be crystal clear. We are only doing commentary on what's being reported and what's being whispered online. Nothing here is confirmed as fact, and we're not claiming any of this actually happened. But the reason this story is blowing up is because the details people are attaching to it feel like a perfect storm of everything the Kardashians have been battling for years: image, control, motherhood, and the terrifying reality of raising kids in front of millions. Because think about it, when it comes to Kim, there's one line nobody's supposed to cross, and that line is her children. You can drag her outfits, her relationships, her business moves, even her law school journey, and she'll clap back with a post, a quote, a smirk, and a perfectly timed "I'm unbothered." But North? That's different. North is the center of Kim's world, and also, if we're being honest, the internet's favorite target whenever a clip goes viral. One day it's "North is hilarious," the next day it's "North is too grown," and suddenly everyone's acting like they're on a parenting jury. And now, these reports are claiming Kourtney didn't just watch the chaos, she allegedly poured more fuel on it. And that's where the suspense kicks in, because the rumors aren't just saying Kourtney made a comment, they're saying she supposedly went public in a way that felt like she picked a side, and that side wasn't Kim's. People are claiming she leaned into the same criticisms Kanye has been throwing around for years, hinting that Kim is letting North live like a mini adult, stepping into rooms and vibes that aren't meant for a kid. And if that's what Kourtney suggested, even indirectly, you can already imagine the temperature rising. The cameras don't even need to be rolling for that kind of tension to explode. So the question everyone's asking is simple, but the answer could get messy. If these reports are even halfway true, what happened in that moment where Kim allegedly lost it? What was said that pushed her past the point of controlled silence? And why are people saying this fight didn't just split the sisters? It left the entire family divided, with North right in the middle of the blast zone. When these reports first began circulating, most people treated them like just another exaggerated rumor floating around social media. At first glance, it sounded familiar, almost predictable. Another supposed clash between two famous sisters, another headline designed to spark outrage and pull in clicks. But as more commentary videos, posts, and anonymous insider claims started stacking up, the tone around the story shifted. Suddenly, this wasn't being framed as simple sibling tension. It was being framed as something far more personal, far more volatile, and far more uncomfortable. According to these reports, the conflict centered on parenting, control, and a child who has grown up with cameras pointed at her since birth. Commentary channels began repeating the same claim again and again. The issue wasn't just that Kourtney allegedly criticized Kim, it was that she reportedly questioned Kim's parenting in a way that involved North directly. People online claimed that Kourtney expressed concern over what she described as North's increasingly adult lifestyle, suggesting that North was being exposed to environments, aesthetics, and expectations that didn't match her age. Whether these words were spoken exactly that way or not is impossible to confirm, but the idea alone was enough to ignite intense reactions. Fans know that parenting has always been a sensitive topic inside this family, especially when it comes to Kim. For Kim, motherhood has never been a side role. It has been part of her public identity, carefully constructed and fiercely defended. She has repeatedly spoken about balancing work, ambition, and raising her children, often pushing back against critics who accuse her of prioritizing fame over family. So when reports suggested that her own sister was echoing criticisms already thrown at her by the internet, the story instantly took on a different weight. People weren't just seeing a disagreement, they were seeing what looked like a betrayal. According to those spreading the story, the tension escalated when comparisons entered the conversation. It wasn't only about North's behavior or appearance, it was about how she stacked up against other children in the family. This is where the commentary became especially explosive. Fans claimed that North was being compared to her cousins, particularly in terms of discipline, boundaries, and behavior. Even without confirmation, this detail struck a nerve with viewers. Comparing children within the same family is something many people consider deeply hurtful, especially when those children are already under constant public scrutiny. Sources cited by gossip commentators claimed that Kim reacted with defensiveness, not the performative kind she sometimes shows on camera, but a raw, emotional response. According to these accounts, Kim felt that North was being reduced to viral clips and surface-level impressions. She allegedly argued that a few seconds of bold behavior or expressive fashion choices did not define her daughter's character. To Kim, North was confident, creative, outspoken, and growing up in a world very different from the one previous generations knew. In her view, trying to force traditional standards onto a child raised in the spotlight was unrealistic. From the perspective attributed to Kourtney in these reports, the concern was framed differently. Commentary suggested that Kourtney believed fame required stricter boundaries, not looser ones. She has often presented herself as the more private, more grounded sister, especially when it comes to her children. According to the narrative spreading online, Kourtney felt that constant exposure could confuse a child's sense of self and safety. To her, questioning these choices was not an attack, but a necessary conversation. However, intention matters far less than impact when emotions are involved. As the story goes, the discussion grew heavier as old frustrations resurfaced. This wasn't the first time Kim and Kourtney had clashed over priorities. Past arguments about work ethic, ambition, and lifestyle choices were suddenly relevant again. Reports claim that Kim felt judged not just as a mother, but as a woman who refuses to choose between career growth and parenting. She allegedly argued that her pursuit of law school and business ventures was constantly framed as neglect, while her sister's different choices were treated as morally superior. Those following the story noticed how quickly the conversation seemed to spiral from concern into accusation. Once parenting styles become moral debates, there is little room left for understanding. According to the reports, every explanation Kim offered was met with another concern, another warning, another reminder of how dangerous fame can be for children. From Kim's perspective, this felt less like care and more like condemnation. Fans watching from the outside could sense how personal the conflict had become. Online reactions poured in almost instantly. Some fans sided with Kim, arguing that North's bold personality was being unfairly policed. They pointed out that confidence and creativity in children are often praised until they come from girls, especially girls raised in unconventional environments. Others sided with Kourtney, saying that childhood should be protected at all costs, regardless of fame. To them, questioning exposure wasn't judgment, it was responsibility. The internet did what it always does best. It split into camps, each convinced they were defending the child's best interest. What made the situation even more intense was the belief that these conversations were no longer private. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, the narrative suggested that private family concerns had spilled into public discourse. For Kim, this reportedly crossed a line. Many viewers speculated that she felt her daughter was being turned into a talking point, a symbol in a larger debate about fame and parenting. That feeling alone, fans argued, would be enough to push any parent toward an emotional breaking point. By this stage of the story, the environment described insiders felt almost suffocating. Raised voices, defensive body language, and an overwhelming sense that nothing productive was being achieved. Kim was portrayed as fighting to reclaim control of her daughter's narrative, while Kourtney was portrayed as standing firm in her belief that silence would only cause more harm later. Neither side appeared willing to back down, because both believed they were protecting something deeply personal. What stands out most in these reports is not the specific claims, but the emotional reality they paint. Two sisters with very different philosophies, both shaped by the same family machine, clashing over what it means to raise a child under a microscope. One sees empowerment through expression, the other sees danger through exposure. And in the middle of it all is a child who, according to the narrative, became the unspoken center of a battle she never asked to be part of. By the time this phase of the story concludes, it is clear that whatever words were exchanged left a lasting impact. Trust appeared shaken, emotions bruised, and family lines blurred. Even without confirmation, the reports resonated because they reflected a broader truth many viewers recognized. When parenting becomes public property, and when family disagreements play out under the gaze of millions, even love can start to sound like criticism. And once that happens, stepping back becomes far harder than stepping forward. When these reports first started circulating online, most people brushed them off as just another exaggerated rumor in the endless cycle of celebrity drama. At a glance, it sounded familiar. Another supposed disagreement between sisters who have spent most of their lives in front of cameras. Another headline designed to provoke outrage and keep people talking. But as more commentary videos, reaction clips, and anonymous insider claims began to surface, the narrative slowly shifted. This no longer felt like a light disagreement or playful shade. It felt personal, emotional, and deeply uncomfortable, especially because a child was at the center of the conversation. According to these reports, the tension began quietly. It wasn't a public blow-up at first, and it wasn't meant for social media. The story being told is that concerns were raised behind closed doors, framed as observations rather than accusations. However, the moment North's name entered the discussion in a critical way, the tone allegedly changed. Commentary channels claim that Kourtney questioned whether North was being allowed to live an increasingly adult lifestyle, surrounded by environments, aesthetics, and expectations that might be too heavy for someone her age. Whether those words were spoken exactly like that is unknown, but the way the reports describe it was enough to strike a nerve. For Kim, motherhood has always been more than a private role. It is tied to her identity, her image, and the way the world judges her. She has spent years defending herself against claims that fame comes before family, often emphasizing how carefully she plans her time around her children. So when reports suggested that her own sister was echoing the same criticisms she already faces from strangers online, it allegedly felt like a deep personal wound. Fans following the story pointed out that criticism hits differently when it comes from family, especially from someone who knows your vulnerabilities. The report suggests that Kim's initial reaction was not explosive but emotional. Sources quoted by gossip commentators claim she felt hurt before she felt angry. From her perspective, North was being reduced to a handful of viral moments and surface-level impressions. Kim reportedly argued that bold fashion choices or confident behavior did not automatically mean something was wrong. In her eyes, North was expressive, creative, and growing up in a world that looks nothing like a traditional childhood. Trying to apply old rules to a new reality, she allegedly felt, was unrealistic and unfair. The narrative spreading online paints Kourtney's perspective as rooted in caution rather than control. According to these claims, Kourtney believed that growing up in the spotlight requires even stronger boundaries, not fewer. She has often positioned herself as the sister who values privacy and emotional grounding, particularly when it comes to children. In this version of events, her comments were meant as concern, not condemnation. She allegedly felt that early exposure to adult spaces and aesthetics could blur important lines for a child still figuring out who they are. However, intention rarely matters once emotions take over. Fans watching the story unfold noted how quickly concern turned into perceived judgment. Once parenting styles become a topic of debate, every word feels heavier, sharper, and more personal. The reports claim that comparisons were introduced, and that is where the situation truly escalated. North was allegedly compared to other children in the family, especially in terms of behavior and discipline. Even without proof, this detail alone unsettled many viewers. Comparing children, especially publicly, is something many people consider crossing an invisible line. According to the story being told, Kim reacted strongly to this. She reportedly pushed back against the idea that children should be measured against each other, arguing that every child grows differently and responds to their environment in their own way. From her point of view, North's confidence was not a problem to be fixed, but a trait to be protected. The more the conversation leaned toward labels and judgments, the more defensive Kim allegedly became. Old frustrations are said to have resurfaced during this exchange. Fans familiar with the sisters' history quickly connected the dots. This wasn't the first time Kim and Kourtney clashed over priorities, ambition, and lifestyle choices. Past arguments about work ethic and balance suddenly felt relevant again. According to the reports, Kim
that her ambition was once again being framed as neglect. Her pursuit of professional goals, including law studies and business expansion, was allegedly used as evidence that she wasn't fully present as a mother. From the angle attributed to Kourtney, the issue wasn't ambition itself, but availability. Commentary suggested she believed that children need consistent emotional presence, not just scheduled quality time. When North's behavior was described as attention-seeking, Kim reportedly took this especially hard. In her mind, labeling her daughter's expression as a cry for attention felt unfair and dismissive. She allegedly insisted that confidence and self-expression should not automatically be treated as warning signs. As the reports describe it, the conversation became circular. Every explanation was met with another concern. Every defense was interpreted as avoidance. Voices reportedly grew louder, and the emotional temperature of the room rose. People said to be present allegedly sensed that the discussion was no longer productive. It had turned into a battle of philosophies with no middle ground in sight. Online reactions mirrored this divide almost instantly. Some fans rallied behind Kim, arguing that North was being unfairly scrutinized simply for being bold and expressive. They pointed out how often confident girls are labeled problematic, especially when they don't fit traditional expectations. Others sided with Kourtney, emphasizing the importance of boundaries and structure for children growing up under intense public attention. Both sides claimed to be defending North's best interests, which only intensified the debate. What made the situation feel even more volatile was the suggestion that these conversations were no longer entirely private. Whether intentionally or accidentally, the reports implied that family concerns had leaked into public narratives. For Kim, this reportedly felt like a betrayal. Many fans speculated that she felt her daughter was being turned into a symbol, used to fuel a broader argument about fame and parenting. That sense of losing control over her child's story was described as deeply upsetting. By the end of this phase of the story, the atmosphere being painted was tense and emotionally charged. Trust appeared strained, and the sisters seemed locked in opposing views that neither was willing to abandon. Kim was portrayed as fiercely protective, fighting to shield her daughter from labels and judgment. Kourtney was portrayed as resolute, believing that uncomfortable conversations are sometimes necessary to prevent greater harm later. Even without confirmation, the reports resonated with audiences because they reflected a familiar fear. Raising a child is difficult enough in private, but doing it under constant observation multiplies every mistake and magnifies every disagreement. As this part of the story settles, one thing becomes clear in the narrative being told. This was no longer just about a difference of opinion. It was about trust, boundaries, and the painful reality that even love can feel like criticism when it comes from the people closest to you. As these reports continued to gain traction, the narrative around the situation became even more layered and emotionally charged. What started as a supposed private disagreement was now being framed as a full-blown family divide, with different sides quietly forming behind the scenes. According to commentary circulating online, once the initial exchange happened, the tension did not fade. Instead, it lingered, growing heavier with every passing hour as messages, reactions, and interpretations spread through inner circles and beyond. People close to the family, as described by gossip commentators, allegedly noticed a shift in energy almost immediately. Kim was said to be withdrawn yet visibly on edge, while Kourtney appeared firm, convinced that what she had expressed needed to be said, regardless of how uncomfortable it made others feel. This difference in emotional response only deepened the gap between them. Where Kim reportedly saw criticism and judgment, Kourtney reportedly saw honesty and responsibility. Neither believed they were in the wrong, and that is often where the most damaging conflicts begin. According to the reports, the conversation did not stay confined to one moment or one room. It continued through follow-up discussions, text messages, and conversations involving other family members. This is where the story becomes even more complicated. Some insiders claimed that Kim felt isolated, as though the focus had shifted from concern to consensus without her. She allegedly worried that a narrative was being built around North that she had no control over, one that painted her parenting choices in a negative light. Commentary channel suggested that Kourtney's stance began to align closely with criticisms that had previously come from outside the family. This detail alone intensified the
drama for fans. Many pointed out that Kim has spent years fighting public judgment, only to now feel like those same arguments were being validated internally. According to the narrative, Kim felt blindsided by this alignment, interpreting it as her sister choosing a broader public narrative over family loyalty. At the same time, the reports painted Kourtney as feeling unheard for years. Some commentators claimed she believed her concerns had been dismissed in the past because they didn't match the family's dominant culture of exposure and branding. From this perspective, speaking up now felt overdue. She allegedly believed that silence would only allow patterns to continue unchecked, especially when it came to children growing up under relentless attention. North remained the unspoken focal point in every retelling of the story. Even when her name wasn't directly mentioned, everything circled back to her presence, her behavior, and her image. Kim reportedly expressed frustration that North was being spoken about as though she were a concept rather than a child. In her view, reducing her daughter to talking points stripped away her humanity. This belief, according to the reports, made Kim even more defensive and emotionally reactive. As the story spread, fans began revisiting old moments, searching for evidence to support one side or the other. Clips were replayed, outfits analyzed, past interviews dissected. What might have once been harmless memories were now being reframed as warning signs or proof points, depending on who interpreting them. This retroactive judgment added another layer of pressure, not just on Kim, but on the entire family dynamic. Commentary suggested that Kim felt increasingly frustrated by how quickly public opinion solidified. She allegedly felt that no amount of explanation could compete with viral narratives. From her perspective, once the idea that North was being raised without boundaries took hold, it became almost impossible to dismantle. This sense of inevitability reportedly weighed heavily on her, contributing to the emotional strain described in the reports. Kourtney, on the other hand, was portrayed as standing her ground. According to the story being told, she believed that discomfort was a necessary part of growth. In her mind, addressing concerns early, even if it caused friction, was better than staying silent and watching potential harm unfold. This belief reportedly made her less willing to soften her stance, even as the situation escalated. Family members were said to be caught in the middle. Some reportedly attempted to mediate, urging both sides to take a step back and consider the long-term impact of their conflict. Others chose silence, unwilling to add fuel to an already volatile situation. This lack of a unified response only reinforced the feeling that the family was divided, not by hatred, but by fundamentally different worldviews. Online, the debate mirrored this internal split. Supporters of Kim argued that children raised in unconventional environments cannot be judged by conventional standards. They emphasized that creativity, confidence, and individuality should not automatically be treated as red flags. Supporters of Kourtney countered that fame does not exempt children from needing structure, privacy, and protection. Both sides claimed to be advocating for North, even as the noise around her grew louder. What made this phase of the story particularly intense was the growing sense that there was no clear resolution in sight. According to the reports, neither sister appeared willing to apologize or back down. Both believed that conceding would mean betraying their core values. Kim reportedly felt she was fighting to protect her child from unfair narratives. Kourtney reportedly felt she was fighting to prevent future harm. As emotions continued to build, the atmosphere described by insiders became increasingly fragile. Every interaction felt loaded, every conversation tinged with unresolved tension. Even neutral topics reportedly carried an undercurrent of conflict, as though the disagreement had seeped into every corner of their relationship. Fans following the story began to speculate that this was no longer just a disagreement about parenting, but a deeper clash about identity, control, and trust. By the end of this chapter in the narrative, one thing felt clear to those watching from the outside. Whatever words had been exchanged had left marks that would not fade quickly. The relationship between the sisters appeared strained, shaped by years of shared history and recent wounds. And as the reports continued to circulate, many fans couldn't help but wonder whether this conflict was moving toward a breaking point, or whether it would simply settle into a quiet, unresolved distance that would linger long after the headlines moved on. As the reports continued to circulate, the situation was described as shifting from tension to something far more
fragile and unpredictable. According to the commentary, this was the stage where emotions stopped simmering and began to surface in visible ways. People close to the family were said to notice that interactions between the sisters felt strained, even when the topic wasn't directly about parenting. There was an unspoken heaviness, as if every conversation carried the weight of what had already been said and what still hadn't been resolved. In these accounts, Kim is reaching a point. Commentators claimed that Kim felt like she was being asked to defend every single decision she made as a mother, not just to the public, but now within her own family. That shift reportedly hurt more than any viral criticism ever could. Strangers online were one thing, family was another. The narrative suggested that Kim expressed feeling cornered. From her point of view, no matter how much she explained her intentions, they were being interpreted through a negative lens. If North was confident, it was labeled as too grown. If North was outspoken, it was labeled as disrespectful. Kim allegedly felt that there was no space left for nuance. In her mind, her daughter's personality was being flattened into a set of assumptions that ignored context, temperament, and the reality of growing up surrounded by cameras. Commentary also highlighted how past dynamics between the sisters began resurfacing more clearly during this phase. Fans familiar with their history pointed out that Kim and Kourtney have long represented opposite approaches to life within the same family system. Kim has often embraced visibility, control, and strategic image building. Kourtney, on the other hand, has publicly distanced herself from constant exposure, emphasizing emotional wellness and privacy. According to the reports, this philosophical divide had always existed, but now it was colliding directly over the most sensitive subject possible. Kourtney, as portrayed in these reports, reportedly felt that Kim was interpreting concern as attack. From her perspective, raising difficult topics was an act of care, not hostility. Commentators claimed that she believed avoiding uncomfortable conversations was part of what allows long-term issues to grow. In her view, addressing potential problems early, even at the risk of conflict, was more responsible than maintaining surface-level peace. However, the problem, as many fans pointed out, wasn't just what was being said, it was how and when it was being said. According to the narrative, Kim felt blindsided by the way these concerns appeared to align with public criticism. Even if Kourtney's intentions were pure, the timing made it feel as though private doubts were reinforcing external judgment. That overlap reportedly made Kim feel exposed and unsupported.
North remained at the center of every retelling, even when she wasn't physically present. The reports emphasized how often her name came up, how frequently her behavior and image were referenced. Kim allegedly expressed that this constant focus stripped North of her innocence, turning her into a case study rather than allowing her to simply exist as a child. This belief, according to commentators, intensified Kim's emotional reaction. She wasn't just defending her parenting, she was defending her daughter's right to grow without being analyzed at every step. As the story spread, fans and commentators began projecting their own experiences onto the situation. Many parents saw reflections of their own struggles in the narrative: the fear of being judged, the frustration of unsolicited advice, the pain of feeling misunderstood by family members who believe they know better. This relatability is what gave the reports such traction. Even without confirmation, the emotional beats felt real enough to resonate. According to the commentary, this phase of the conflict was marked by repeated attempts to clarify intentions, none of which seemed to land. Kim reportedly tried to explain that North's environment was supervised, that expression did not equal neglect, and that creativity should not be punished. Kourtney reportedly maintained that supervision does not replace boundaries, and that children need protection from adult spaces regardless of intent. Each explanation seemed to reinforce the divide rather than bridge it. Family members were described as increasingly uncomfortable. Some were said to encourage both sisters to pause the conversation, suggesting that emotions were too high for anything productive to come out of it. Others reportedly chose to stay quiet, unwilling to align themselves with either side. This silence, according to the narrative, only added to the sense of isolation Kim felt and the sense of urgency Kourtney felt. Without mediation, the conflict was left to grow on its own. Online speculation
reached new levels. Fans dissected body language from old footage, analyzed past interviews, and connected dots that may or may not have been related. Every smile, every pause, every comment from either sister was suddenly interpreted through the lens of this conflict. What might have once seemed harmless now appeared loaded with meaning. This constant reinterpretation added pressure to an already strained situation. Commentators also pointed out how gender expectations played into the reactions. Some argued that girls, especially confident ones, are often policed more harshly than boys. Others countered that the concern wasn't about confidence, but about exposure. This debate echoed through comment sections, podcasts, and reaction videos, further amplifying the narrative and keeping it alive. According to the reports, Kim became increasingly aware that the story was no longer something she could control. Even if she stayed silent publicly, the speculation continued. Every lack of response was treated as confirmation by some and denial by others. This sense of losing narrative control reportedly heightened her emotional state, making the conflict feel inescapable. Kourtney, meanwhile, was portrayed as standing firm, even as criticism came her way. Some fans accused her of hypocrisy, while others praised her for speaking up. According to the commentary, she believed that being uncomfortable was better than being silent. From her perspective, the backlash was proof that the topic needed to be discussed, not avoided. By this point in the story, the emotional distance between the sisters was described as palpable. Even routine interactions were set to feel tense, marked by guarded responses and unspoken resentment. What once might have been resolved with time and space now seemed complicated by public attention and entrenched positions. As this stage of the narrative settled, one theme became increasingly clear. The conflict was no longer just about one comment or one disagreement. It had evolved into a deeper clash over values, trust, and the meaning of protection. Both sisters, according to the reports, believed they were acting out of love. But love expressed through opposing philosophies can easily be mistaken for attack. And once that misunderstanding takes hold, repairing the damage becomes far more difficult than anyone expects. By the time the story reached the stage, the tone around it had shifted from heated disagreement to something far more somber. According to the reports and ongoing commentary, what lingered most was not anger, but damage. The kind of damage that settles quietly between people who once felt inseparable. Those close to the situation described an atmosphere where nothing felt resolved, only paused. Conversations ended without closure. Silence replaced shouting, and that silence, many believe, was heavier than the argument itself. Kim was portrayed as emotionally drained, not just from the disagreement, but from the realization that the people she expected to feel safest with now questioned her most sensitive role. According to the narrative being shared, she felt as though her motherhood was under a microscope, not only from the world, but from within her own family. That feeling reportedly stayed with her long after the conversation ended. It wasn't about winning the argument anymore. It was about trust, and whether that trust had been cracked beyond repair. Commentators claimed that Kim struggled with the idea that concern and judgment had become indistinguishable. From her perspective, once North became a topic of debate rather than protection, something fundamental shifted.
She allegedly felt that intentions no longer mattered once the impact crossed a certain line. The repeated focus on North's behavior, appearance, and environment reportedly made Kim feel like her daughter was being turned into a narrative instead of being treated as a child navigating her own growth. Kourtney, in these reports, was described as feeling misunderstood and unfairly cast as the villain. She reportedly believed that her concerns were being reduced to jealousy or control when, in her mind, they came from care. According to the commentary, she felt frustrated that honesty was being punished and that silence would have been interpreted as indifference. From her viewpoint, raising difficult questions was part of being responsible, even if it cost her comfort or approval. This disconnect in how both sisters interpreted the same exchange is what made the situation feel unsolvable. Kim saw boundary crossing. Kourtney saw necessary confrontation. Neither felt heard. Neither felt validated. And as a result, the emotional distance between them reportedly widened. People familiar with the family dynamics suggested that this wasn't the kind of conflict that fades with time alone. It was rooted too deeply in values and identity. North remained the quiet center of the storm. According to the reports, Kim became increasingly aware that the story was no longer something she could control.
Increasingly protective in the days that followed, limiting discussions and avoiding situations where her daughter could become a topic again. This reaction was framed by commentators as instinctual. When a parent feels their child has become vulnerable to judgment, the natural response is to shield. Whether that shielding was interpreted as defensiveness or love depended entirely on who was watching. Fans continued to debate the situation intensely. Some argued that Kim was right to push back, saying that children raised in the spot grace, not extra criticism. Others maintained that fame should come with stricter limits, not looser ones. What became clear was that the conversation had grown beyond the family itself. It had turned into a larger discussion about parenting, exposure, and the price of growing up famous. As the narrative evolved, some commentators began questioning whether the story was ever really about North alone. They suggested that the conflict reflected years of unresolved tension between the sisters, differences in lifestyle, priorities, and values that had been papered over for the sake of unity now had a catalyst. Parenting, especially when children are involved, tends to expose those differences in ways nothing else can. The lack of a clear resolution became one of the most talked about aspects of the story. There was no apology, no joint statement, no public reassurance that everything was fine. According to the reports, that absence spoke volumes. It suggested that the issue wasn't something that could be smoothed over with a few words. It was ongoing, unresolved, and deeply personal. Commentary channels noted that both sisters appeared to retreat into their respective corners. Kim focused inward, prioritizing her children and maintaining distance from the noise. Kourtney reportedly stood firm in her stance, unwilling to reframe her concerns just to restore surface-level peace. Neither approach was portrayed as wrong, but both came with consequences. For many viewers, this stage of the story felt uncomfortable because it mirrored real-life conflicts, moments where love and concern collide, where good intentions lead to painful outcomes, where no one feels like the villain, yet everyone feels hurt. That relatability is what kept people engaged, even as the speculation grew tiring. As time passed, the conversation slowly shifted from what was said to what it meant. What does it mean when family members disagree so strongly about how a child should be raised? What does it mean when private concerns become public narratives? And what does it mean for a child to grow up knowing that even the adults around them don't always agree on what is best? According to the reports, the sisters did not immediately reconcile. Instead, there was distance, polite interactions, careful words, a sense that something fragile had been cracked and was being handled delicately, if at all. Fans interpreted this as proof that the disagreement cut deeper than previous fights. What makes this part of the story linger is the lack of clear heroes or villains. Kim is portrayed as a mother fighting to protect her child from judgment and labels. Kourtney is portrayed as a parent who believes silence can be just as harmful as conflict. Both positions come from love, yet they clash in ways that feel impossible to reconcile. And perhaps that is why this narrative refuses to fade. It taps into a universal fear, the fear that even with the best intentions, even with love at the center, we can still hurt the people closest to us, especially when children are involved, especially when the world is watching. As these reports continue to circulate, one thing remains consistent. There is no clean ending, no final answer, only questions about boundaries, trust, and how families navigate conflict when fame magnifies every crack. Whether the story is exaggerated, misunderstood, or rooted in partial truths, it resonates because it reflects a reality many people recognize. Love does not always prevent conflict, and sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought with the people we care about most. So that's where this story stands for now, and it's exactly why it has people talking nonstop. Whether these reports are exaggerated, misinterpreted, or simply the internet turning private tension into public drama, one thing is clear. This situation has struck a nerve. When parenting, family loyalty, and fame collide, there are no easy answers. What might look like concern to one person can feel like betrayal to another, especially when a child is at the center of the conversation. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think this is just another case of sensationalized commentary spiraling out of control, or does it highlight a real issue about raising kids in the spotlight?
Is Kim being unfairly judged for allowing her daughter to express herself? Or does Kourtney's alleged concern reflect fears many people
quietly share? And where should the line really be drawn between protection and control when a child grows up under constant attention? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this is one of those stories where perspective matters. There isn't a single right answer, and that's what makes the discussion so intense. If you found this breakdown interesting and want more commentary that looks beyond the headlines and into the emotions and dynamics behind them, make sure to like this video. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more deep dives into trending stories, rumors, and viral moments, all presented as commentary and discussion, not claims of fact. And turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. Because with situations like this, the conversation doesn't end here. It evolves, it shifts, and sometimes it reveals even more than the original headline ever did.